G'day everyone, today I'm going to answer the 3 questions I've been asked the most about my BMW E46 build. I'd urge you to hang around to the end of this video because there's going to be some useful information that I'm going to give you which may help in terms of what you can do with your E46 build. I get a real sense with the questions that I'm getting in the comments that there's a bit of frustration out there in terms of the lack of information for people wanting to build non-M E46. I really feel for you guys because I've been through exactly the same thing, and I've spent literally hundreds and hundreds of hours scouring the internet and looking at all the range of different options for modifications for either the 2.2 litre, 2.5 or 3 litre variants of the E46. What I'm going to start with today is answering the 3 questions that I've been asked the most regarding the upgrades that I've done on my E46. But if you want to get caught up in terms of my top 5 performance upgrades for your E46, how about you click on the link above, or is it this side? Anyway, click on the link above, and that'll get you caught up in terms of the top 5 upgrades that I think you should be making with your E46. So I'm going to set up the camera at the desk, take a load off, and we'll get straight into it. One of the most frequently asked questions I get asked about my E46 build is in relation to the camshafts and what I've installed on my E46. Well, I've installed the Schrick Camshafts, and I've got a 264 degree duration on the inlet and 248 degree duration on the exhaust, with 10.5mm lift on the inlet and 10mm lift on the exhaust. Now I got those from VAC Motorsport, and the reason I chose VAC Motorsport for my supplier for my camshafts was that they had a good range of options for Schrick camshafts for the M54B. I also believe Bimmerworld have a couple of options of Schrick camshafts for your M54B, so you might want to check them out as well if you want to do a bit of price shopping or if you've already got an account with them. Everybody's build is different. We all have different expectations in terms of what we want to get from our E46. Before you go out and buy a set of camshafts, you want to sit down and have a really good hard think about what you're building, what your expectations are, not just now but in the future. Is it going to be a street car that I'm going to use on a daily basis to get me to and from work, for example? Is it going to be a track car? Or is it going to be a combination of both? And the reason you need to ask yourself all these questions is because the camshafts are a big investment. I paid over $2,000 Australian to have my camshafts landed here in Brisbane. So by the time I purchased it, exchange rates, freight, import duties and all that sort of thing, I think it worked out about $2,300. I'd imagine you guys are exactly like me. You don't have the resources of a race team where you can make a choice on camshafts, stick it on the dyno, and then if you're not happy with it, stick another set in and see what results you get. So have a really good hard think about what you want from your engine and then make your camshaft selection based on that criteria. And you're not going to waste a heap of money and you're not going to be disappointed with the end results. The camshaft selection really should be done after you've already done a few other steps. So after you've upgraded your intake, after you've upgraded your exhaust system to a cat back exhaust system, and also after you've done a little bit of maintenance as well. There are a few things you should really look at in relation to maintenance to ensure you get the very best out of your new camshaft upgrade. Firstly, the Vanos. If it's not been serviced yet, now's the time to do it. But also, check the camshaft position sensors. The second thing is a CCV. If you've done over 100,000 Ks and it's not been looked at, chances are it's going to need replacing. Also, check that the hoses aren't old and cracked and possible source of a vacuum leak. And the third thing is the Diesel valve. Once again, if you've done over 100,000 Ks and that's not been looked at, now's probably the time to throw a few dollars at it and put in a new one. Doing these 3 things will ensure that you'll get the very best out of your new camshaft upgrade. The other thing is once you've installed the camshafts, you're going to have to get the engine retuned. Allow in your budget to have your engine retuned for the new camshafts. Moving on, the next question I've been asked a fair bit about is in relation to the exhaust system. So I've done several videos on the Supersprint Cat Back exhaust system that I've installed on my E46 BMW, and links above to one of my earlier videos on the Supersprint system, and that may answer a couple of your questions. The tone of the questions that I seem to be getting is in relation to what I believe is a good system for the E46. What I found with my research is that most of the reasonably good quality catback systems will give you very similar horsepower gains. So I'm not talking about eBay catback exhaust systems, I'm talking from reasonably known brands. I did a lot of research before I ended up going with the Supersprint system, and to be honest, I had another brand in mind, but then Turner Motorsport had a sale on the Supersprint catback system, and they had, I think it was 25% off, and that brought the price pretty much into my budget, and for me it was then a no-brainer, because I think the Supersprint system is still renowned as one of the best on the market. Being a European manufacturer, the tone from the Supersprint system may not be to your liking because it's more a European sort of tone. A couple of the other brands that I also really like are the Corsa and Baller. Both those are American brands, and they tend to give probably a deeper, more rumbly sort of tone. A real good tip here is that if you type into a Google search catback exhaust systems BMW E46, you'll find that you'll get people who've recorded the sound of various catback systems. So have a bit of a play through that and you'll get a bit of a feel for what I'm talking about in relation to the difference of tone and the difference between a European tone and an American tone. It might clarify your thoughts there. Once again, have a think about, is it going to be a street car or is it going to be a track car? Because that also have an impact in terms of the combination of mufflers that you select to go onto the car when you're buying your system. Now, when you're shopping for your new catback exhaust system, you'll find there's a few options available, not only in terms of the budget, but in terms of the noise level. Most of these changes relate to the midsection to either keep the noise level close to stock or to add a bit more volume to your new catback system. And the quality of finish is really important because that's going to impact the ease of installation as well. So if you're like me and you're doing a lot of work in your garage, by yourself, because as soon as you say I'm putting a new exhaust on, most of your mates are like, oh sorry, I've got an appointment with the dentist, or I've got to return a couple of DVDs or something. You won't see them for a week. If you've got an E46 and you've installed a catback system, how about you drop me a comment below in terms of what you like about it, how you found the ease of installation and things like that, so that we can share those comments with other E46 owners around the world.
The reason I've got you under the car for this next bit is I'm going to start to talk about my future plans. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I'm just going to cover off on a couple of things which I believe are the most pressing that I'm going to probably start on the soonest. I am going to make a complete video, probably mid-December, late December, on a review of all the upgrades that I've made on my E46 and cover off in more depth the future plans for my build. But there's a couple of issues that I need to address to complete what I would refer to as stage one of my project, as much as my wife doesn't want to hear that this is only the beginning. Yeah, a bit of a sore point, but anyway. One of the areas which I really want to work on, and that's in relation to the clutch and the flywheel. At the moment, I'm just running the standard clutch and dual mass flywheel in my E46. Shortly after I purchased my E46, I replaced the clutch. Since that point, it's probably only done 20,000 Ks, maybe 30,000, no, 20 to 25,000 Ks. So my initial thoughts were do these other modifications, suck it up, wear it out, and then do the clutch flywheel upgrade. There is a but, yeah. What happened is when I was doing the oil pan, I had to support the engine. I've raised the engine too much and it's put a strain on the gearbox, and the BMW gearbox is in two pieces, and where it joins there's an RTV sealant. And what I've done, I think, is by putting too much pressure on the front of the gearbox, it's broken that silicon seal and I've got an oil leak. And it's not major. Sorry, I just had to move around. Every few weeks when I get under the car, there's just a couple of drops of gearbox oil sitting around that seal. So if it's leaking when it's cold, when it's hot, I think it's going to be pissing out. As you can see, I don't have a lot of clearance under here, so I'm going to have to work out a way of getting the car a little bit higher so I can drop the gearbox out. And it's not in my budget, but somehow I'm going to have to find the money, because I think I'm going to need to do this before I do any serious other driving. So that's a bit of a setback, and that's what happens when you play with cars. Shit happens, you know. The dual mass flywheel is designed to make the driving experience just that little bit smoother and easier. The sacrifice is because of the weight, you lose horsepower. The crankshaft has to work harder to get movement into the flywheel because it's a heavier mass. By going a single mass flywheel, you can actually gain 10, maybe 15 horsepower by getting rid of that dual mass flywheel. And then for me, for example, where I'm aiming to push for around about 300 horsepower, it gives me the option to go for a better grade clutch, which is more able to handle that increased horsepower. I've already done a heap of research into the clutch and flywheel upgrade for my E46 build. My preference at this stage is for the Clutch Masters single mass steel flywheel with either the FX250 or FX350 clutch plate. I really like the quality of the components and also the performance and horsepower gains that kit will add to my E46 build. There's some cheaper options available, which given my budget at the moment is probably a better option for me. I don't want to go down that path of just installing a clutch flywheel package based on price to get me out of a problem and then be disappointed in the compromise after 12 months. If at all possible, I'd rather go the one I really want, and then I know I'm done and dusted for a couple of years. That's my dilemma with the clutch. So I'm going to crawl out of here and I'll have a look at the next thing that I'm looking to upgrade on my E46. So the next upgrade that I've got planned is in relation to the cylinder head and the valve train. Ideally, this would have been the next step on my upgrade list, but as I just explained, the clutch and flywheel have sort of jumped up the order a bit. But anyway, with the cylinder head, I've got no concerns with it. This is more about increasing the flow through the head. So what I'm looking at doing is a port and polish and flow test to make sure that that's flowing a lot better. And then as far as the valve train, I've already done the camshafts, but what still needs to be upgraded is the valve springs, the valves, valve guides, valve seals, all that sort of thing, and then timing chains, upper and lower timing chains, all the tensioners, upgrading the tensioner to the M3 tensioner. So it's an expensive project, but the horsepower gains are going to be exceptionally good. But my number one priority obviously at the moment is to just get this thing going and driving so I can start enjoying it. So that's what I've got planned. So what I'd suggest is have a really good, honest think about what you want to achieve with your E46 build. There's a bit of an old saying in relation to horsepower and dollars. I mean, the more horsepower you want, the more dollars you're going to need to get it, basically. Have a think about what your budget is so that you can then allocate your budget to the areas which are going to give you the best bang for your buck in terms of the driving style that you want. Trust me when I say this, once you've determined what you want out of your car and what your goals are with the car, it really helps to simplify the way you allocate your budget to certain options. So if you'd like to see more videos for BMWs on performance upgrades, maintenance, and to follow the build of my E46, then don't forget to subscribe and tickle the bell so you get notified each time I upload a new video. If you want to learn more about the camshafts and the camshaft installation that I did on my E46 BMW, then you can click on this video here. Or if you want to watch the video that YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy the most, then click on this video here.
I really enjoyed your company. Thank you very much for watching. But until we meet again, look after yourselves, stay safe, TTFN.